Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is the Unstuck movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. And what we do on this platform is we find breakthrough. We help you find breakthrough in your life by telling true testimonies of breakthrough from incredible people. And today, I have the wonderful Zerina Derveni with us on the show. Did I get your last name right?
You did, yes.
Oh, nice. I love when I get it right. That was perfect. So I'm so excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about identity shifts, burnout recovery, emotional mastery, how to detox from the success mindset, and being driven but disconnected. What if you find yourself so driven but disconnected? And Zerina, I love to dive in with a powerful question right up front. Your story goes into you spent 12 years in corporate working for global companies. You were an executive and you wanted to rediscover yourself. How did that come about that you decided you needed to rediscover who you were and what you were doing and why you were doing it?
Yeah. No, well, thanks for having me, Rob. First of all, I appreciate it. And I think my journey, it's not the linear journey that most people think, right? The rediscover doesn't just happen in a linear way. For me, at least, it happened very young, even starting my first corporate job, right? There was this subconscious belief of what success is. And at that time, for me, it was get an education, get a good paying job, and then just start working in the office. And that's how my journey started. And I remember even in my first job, I remember thinking, is this really, the purpose of my life? But then you're so young and you're all obviously, needing financial assistance. So you're just going in and exploring, right? So I think it started the first time where I was just asking myself these questions, but then I didn't have enough experience to really, back it up with more questions beyond that. So started off, I had a great success in my first corporate job. And then towards the third year, I started feeling like, okay, I need more. And the idea of success became very external validation driven, right? So more money, I need to, challenge myself more. Then I moved into my second corporate job where I was managing financial institutions in North America. So that was for me rewarding in a sense of challenging. And also I was able to gain respect, in my department with the senior executives, work my way up the ladder. I remember putting in so many hours, like most of us, right, that are in that kind of hustle stage of just go and do your best. But there wasn't a lot of purpose behind just, making more money and kind of like searching this significance that I thought I was valuing that would, in turn then make me happier. But then after, 2, 3 years, kind of that same inner voice was coming and it was, is this really what my life is purpose is, right? So and then, I would ask myself these questions, but then the logical part of me would be like, oh, come on, like you need to work, like this is life. Like, what are you doing asking yourself these questions? Like, stay busy. So this idea of staying busy and almost, leading to a burnout, I identified as success. I identified as like, this is kind of like the traditional way of success. And growing up with very, successful executives around me, they kind of had this like hardcore mindset about them that I adapted naturally, right? So work hard, don't complain, just keep going. And yeah, I think COVID happened at that time, and I was in the travel luxury industry, so that took a toll on it, and that's when I started to look for another career kind of in the same space, but maybe more technology focused. And then I, at that time, found my dream job, right? Which I worked for this great team, and we were a startup in the SaaS platform industry, actually working in loyalty currency. So it was a really cool concept. And I was really excited.
Loyalty currency. What does that mean?
So without getting in too much detail, because I don't know how much I'm allowed to share, but basically, it was a platform that enabled you to use your currency, whether you're part of an airline points or just, retail, like whatever point system you're signed up for, you can actually use that and purchase services. So streaming services. Yeah. So it was a cool way of enabling loyalty currency to be a form of payment. I thought it was so unique. The CEO that backed this up, I really admired his vision and started working there, and I was really excited, and I had, very much thought that that was going to be my long-term plan for my career. But then I think after, again, it was the 2 or 3 year itch where I started to do a lot of self-development work. I started listening more into that voice, and actually, ironically, would listen to so many podcasts when it came to coaching, and I resonated with the context. And I didn't necessarily have at that time the tools to say, "Oh, that seems like that was my journey." But all of the content I was absorbing, I was like, "Wow, I can finally put a word to things that I was personally dealing with
Mm.
that I shut out because I was going through that kind of traditional route of success." And yeah, I got really into coaching. I even did a seminar with Tony Robbins. So that was for me more from a learning perspective rather than actually being in there and healing. But I just saw the impact of people going through breakthroughs and people just, again, living more in alignment with who they are. And then I started my self-discovery journey of figuring out, okay, like I, was tired of my own BS. I'm not going to keep repeating this pattern, and what can I do, and what do I want to do in life where I can build something actually long-term and sustainable. And coaching women came to my mind, and I got so excited about the idea, Rob, but I sat on it for 6 months before I made any decisions because I wanted to be clear that this was something that, made sense before going in and investing. And that's how it started. And it took me a year to get certified, learn all the content, build my brand, and then transition into a life coach. So to kind of close that story off, my self-discovery journey was, again, not linear. It was in like ups and downs, but that inner voice just kept coming up, and I decided to do something about it finally.
It's really interesting, and I want to dive into this here in a minute. Just how success is a difficult pattern to break out of, because I mean, who doesn't want to have success? Who doesn't want to be successful, right? And it seems like it can be the end all be all. So I'm excited to go into this because a lot of the times on the podcast, we'll talk about, not having success, striving towards that, figuring out what that is, and finding those breakthroughs. But it's also unique, uniquely unique to have success in an area, but know that it's not where you're supposed to be. So I want to go there, but before we go there, let's just pause for a second. This is the Unstuck movement. So I created this platform to help people find breakthrough in their life personally and professionally. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. You can check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Over 500 heart-centered entrepreneurs from all over the world serving one another, and also the Pro Podcaster Academy. If you want to launch your platform, make an impact in the world, be the go-to authority in your space, and also make incredible connections, I encourage you to launch your own platform. I'd love to help you do that at robzwentz.com. Zerina with us today is a transformational life coach, helping high performers shift from burnout and overachievement to clarity, confidence, and authentic living. With a background in corporate leadership, she now uses brain-based coaching, emotional intelligence, and intuition to guide powerful breakthrough experiences. So it is like, especially when you're in America and success is like what people want. That seems to be the signpost that you should be chasing after. And all the other things will, fall in place once you're successful. It's such a trap. And even if you've heard a million times that it's not the answer, you still want to go after it because we all want to feel security. We all want to have an income that allows us to be free, financial freedom, to help our family, to support the people around us, to give us a lifestyle that is, desirable. But which makes it a very difficult pattern to break. So I would imagine the people around you were like, you seem crazy. This is a crazy thing to do, to want to get out of this very successful industry that you're in. How did you first break free from that mindset? I know you heard that voice in the back of your head, but the external voice is talking to you can usually drown that out. What finally was like, you know what? this something broke and I have to go fix it.
Yeah. So part of the self-discovery journey that I had led to self-trust, right? And unfortunately, it's not a quick turnover. You have to go through the whole, and there's phases to self-discovery, but once you actually go through that whole self-discovery phase, when it comes to self-trust, when I was ready to vocalize what I wanted to do and make the transition, I mean, imagine you're going from this executive corporate to, hey, I want to be a life coach. Of course, everyone around me, including my family, was like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Are you going through a quarter life crisis? And because I had done the work and I had done my self discovery the right way, which was the longer way, unfortunately,
Mhm.
when it came to my self trust of being able to vocalize it and take some of those challenges, I was very clear. I was very calm because I did have finally self trust. And self trust is different than self confidence, right? I think with confidence, you can kind of like get your way around things, but it lingers in your head. But
Mhm.
I was extremely clear without even having much of a roadmap of how it was going to go. There was a lot of uncertainties, but I just felt very clear with my decision. There was this internal alignment that was just there. And until you reach that, you know how true that feels. So
Mhm.
I think just my demeanor and my self trust really was reflective of people's, then shifting their focus on what are you doing to, you know what? I have faith in you. I think you're on the right track. So that was my journey. I think the self trust really helped.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying too, having you found your vision, like you found the vision of where you were heading. And I think so often in life, the biggest thing, well, not I think, I know for sure, the thing that we're missing is having a clear vision. Because
Right.
once it's clear and you know that you know, then nobody can really steer you wrong. And it's interesting, as you just said too, when you know that you know, then other people start to see that in you. But when you kind of doubt yourself, people see that.
Hmm.
And there's magic there of knowing that you know. So talk about the self-discovery that you went through. What was that process like? Because most people never find that. Most people can't figure that part out. And it takes them a very long time to figure that part out because there's so many external voices and things they feel like they should do that muddies the water of what they're called to do.
Right. Yeah. So it starts with I call it the awakening phase, right? So it's questions that you ask yourself, like, who am I? What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? You ask these simple yet very important questions. And that's really your mindset or your subconscious brain starting to awaken, right?
Mhm.
So I think starting there, it's a good step. And sometimes, we ask ourselves simple questions, but how many of those questions actually linger, right?
Mhm.
This who am I is a very common question, but living a busy life, having financial responsibilities, we don't often have time to really answer that. So I think if that's a common theme and it could be phases through your life or certain patterns that you're able to look back and pick up on, that's a good starting point. So again, it's the awakening phase. It's a really important phase, and it's investing in that phase. And how does that happen? Usually, you ask yourself certain questions. Like for me, it was really important that who am I was really linked to my career because I do value success. I do value being driven and having a higher purpose. So that question was coming up, every few years. And when I finally started to look into it, I kind of transitioned naturally into the next phase, which is the unlearning phase. So this is where a lot of our, old patterns, behaviors, beliefs, value systems are stored in our subconscious brain, which is almost 95% of our mindset is stuck in the subconscious brain. And then I started tapping into the conscious side, the 5% that we use not often, but really started unlearning some of those old values and beliefs and understanding, even the definition of what success is.
Mhm.
Um, Through that journey, I learned that I had defined success through significance. So a lot of external validations, which most of us do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not long term
Hmm.
sustainable for happiness. And then I started really tapping into, okay, how can I contribute? That being my default motivator. How can I create value? But how does that align with who I really am and
Hmm.
not this state of like performance? Because I think we're great. Once you reach success the first few times, you're so good at putting up this performance act and you can do it. And in life you need to do it sometimes, right? You're not going to always be the state of who you are. You need to be able to, perform and do well, but you don't want that to be your default setting. You want who you are as a person and the value you actually want to bring and contribute to be your default setting. So that shift for me really happened in the unlearning phase of self-discovery. And once you start getting your mindset ready, then you got to start preparing for the real stuff. And that's exploring phase
Hmm.
3. So going out there and exploring, like I knew that I wanted something different, but until I started to actually get into coaching, that's when it was clear to me, and exploring can sometimes shift you in other ways, and that's okay too. But I think the first 2 phases, Rob, are really important. And that's what makes you, stand out from the crowd, because a lot of people won't really invest even in the unlearning. They'll just get stuck in the kind of like, that who am I phase, awakening, right? It's I often relate it to self awareness. We all have it, but how many of us actually do something about it, right? It's like
Hmm.
the first step is to have it, but then what are you actually doing to change things? So, yeah.
Yeah, and it can. I'll tell you that question. Just going to the question of who am I, that question will it can really change you to your core, and it'll constantly change over time too. I have there was a woman that I worked with for a while who was wildly successful, president of a $30 million company, and she everything about her was attached to performance. Everything about her was attached to success, and she didn't need status and recognition from other people, but she needed it for herself. Like she needed to prove to herself, constantly proving to herself. And it's interesting, as we worked together, she didn't actually know who she was without all of that stuff, right? She
Yeah.
didn't know who she was as a person without striving, without achieving, without goals, right? And most of us don't, because that's kind of how we think. I mean, it's actually really easy being a high achiever. Like, well, yeah, I'm somebody who has this success in my life. I'm somebody who does this, and even if you're serving and helping people, you're still in this mentality of success-driven mindset. So I'm curious, that question, "Who am I?" What answer did you come to that made sense? That made sense, that led you outside of that corporate life.
hmm So I think of what I did in that specific moment, I was tapping into my core strengths.
Hmm.
So strengths that were there without me having to perform,
Hmm.
right? Again, I got really good at, you gave me a task, Rob, even if I didn't know it, I would get you results. Like I would do the work, I would do the research. Like there was nothing that I didn't think I could do. So there was that bit of self-confidence that was just ingrained in me.
Hmm.
But then it was like, okay, but what do I actually enjoy doing? What am I really good at? So it was really leaning into my core strengths. And that took time. And that even took to talking to really trusted people around me who I knew were going to give me the real deal and not just fluff things to make me feel better. Right. But part of that journey was really understanding, okay, what are my core strengths? Because I'm a big believer, even as a coach, I'm a big believer in tapping into your strengths. Don't worry too much about your weaknesses. Like I think really invest in your strengths, and then what you need to work on your weaknesses, you can do it along the way, but the focus should be the strengths. So that's the journey I took, and it's the journey I believe in. And then from there it was asking, people that you really value and trust, what the strengths they saw in you, and seeing if there was this alignment with what you were
Hmm.
identifying as a core strength. So I think there for me was my understanding of why I wanted to go into the space of being a life coach. I mean, I think it would make more sense for me to have gone into executive coaching, leadership coaching, sales coaching. Yeah, I chose life because I thought that was a really important component of coaching, where a lot of value is put into career coaching or performance coaching, but how many of us are really getting support from an overall life objective? So I was always growing up that person you called when you had an issue or a challenge, just the way that I would give advice and the way I was very grounded at understanding things was just a natural skill. I think that connection for me is extremely important with people. So started tapping into my strengths of being able to connect with people from all walks of life, right? But I guess to answer your question, it was really tapping into my strengths, and then from there, getting trusted people around me to validate it, because you're still vulnerable at that time, right?
Mhm.
Now I think I have much more self trust, but back then I was vulnerable in making sure that I was able to identify these
Yeah. Yeah, I
core.
love that. I mean, and it's so true too. I love that because like our gift, and I use our gifts, right? Our because honestly, they're gifts. Our strengths are gifts because we didn't do anything to be really naturally acclimated towards something. That's how we were created, right? So we have natural gifts that we are good at.
Mhm.
And like you said, focusing on the weaknesses doesn't do anything. Focusing on your strengths, focusing on your gifts everything will come up because of that, which is counterintuitive to how we would think things need to be. I need to focus on these weaknesses and make them better. No, focus on the things you're really good at and everything's going to get better. And your confidence is going to get better. Your self-esteem is going to get better. You're going to see more success. You're going to impact more people. So I couldn't agree more. And I really love the approach to it because especially when you go out and you start asking other people, because we can self-awareness, you mentioned self-awareness, it can be so hard to truly see ourselves, our flaws, our blind spots, but also our strengths. So you got to listen for what people say, because they'll if you trust them, if they're valuable to you, they're going to point out the things that are really who you are. And I think a huge part of that too is you acknowledging and actively receiving those compliments, because so many
Yeah.
times people can hear, oh, thank you, that's I'm good at speaking, or I'm good at sales, or I'm good at connecting with people, or whatever it might be, good at problem solving, but you don't receive it because you don't believe it in yourself. You're like, I used to think this, uh, well, if they really knew me, they wouldn't think that, right? Because I
Yeah.
didn't believe in myself. And so the more you learn to believe in yourself, the more you're like, oh wow, people have been telling me this all along. I just needed to pay attention and believe it.
Mhm.
Um, that's really good. And real quick, I want to take a break. We got to shout the sponsor of the show because uh, I want to just lay the groundwork when we come back to talk about success. You had a definition of what success meant to you before, but what does success mean to you now, and how has that drastically changed your life? We'll talk about that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Zerina, what does success look like to you now on a day-to-day basis? How do you picture success?
Mhm. I think it changes, I'll be honest, and I think I'm in my journey of still understanding the true definition. But for the last 2 years, it's really been for me creating value. So
Mm.
I'm not looking for status recognitions. I'm obviously there is a financial component of it that's important to me, but even that's like, long term, it's really how am I creating value? And that's how, for me, I define success right now. And the creating value stems from this internal alignment. So, I have a very clear understanding of what my core values are, right? I know my top 10, I know my top three. So when it comes to making any business or personal decision, that's the compass I'm using, because I'm really into wanting to create value for my clients, for myself, for people around me. So that's been my true definition of success. And anything that comes from it, any sort of significance, right? Any sort of status or financial gain is just a bonus, because I'm so focused on this journey of just creating value.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, especially when you're a high achiever, and this isn't across the board, I don't think, but it's definitely was true for me. I could be very focused on myself in the sense that being of service to people was not a priority. Priority was for me getting what I needed to get, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
so being of service was like this like completely different mindset of like, okay, I got to like help people, and that's going to bring me the things that I desire. And in creating those win-win environments, right? So it's a hard mindset shift sometimes, but like, okay, I need to create value for others. That's going to be something that brings me all the things that selfishly I might want to gain, but I have to be able to help other people to get there. And I think that's such a valuable lesson to learn, but also such a journey to go through to get to that place. And I'm curious, 'cause especially when you're high achieving, relationships can be difficult. It can be
Right.
difficult because you're one track mind. Where am I going? What am I doing? Even for people who seem to have all of it, the relationship part, they struggle in. How has that journey been for you?
hmm I actually think that this journey has made me softer in relationships. Again, this is my own core beliefs, but I believe even as a woman, being in my feminine and having this higher purpose has softened me in relationships. Whereas before, being in the state of performance and achieving success that was a little bit superficial, it actually hardened me and made relationships much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And now in where I am in my life, and an understanding of clarity. And I just want to like be clear, like I'm not all of a sudden I know myself 100%. It's an ongoing journey, but I'm able to really communicate my needs and my core values, and this compassionate understanding that I've been able to explore more because of what I've chosen to do for my career has actually helped build relationships and make it stronger. Now, it's also helped me see, like, I'm able to go into a room and I can spot all the performers right away, right? Because I used to be them. So it's interesting. It's helped me now go into a room and see people, and seeing them from a compassionate perspective, not a judgment perspective, because everybody will go in their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think it's helped soften me in relationships, which has, improved that. But it also is a little bit intimidating, right? I people who meet me, and even in my dating journey, when I was a life coach, it was a little bit intimidating because they think you're like a therapist and you know everything, but that's not the case. You're just more aware and you're more in tune with just human behavior, and you understand things, but it comes from a very compassionate place, not an understanding. And you're able to make decisions a little bit quicker because you know your core values. So personally, I do think it's helped me build stronger connections, be more empathetic, be more resilient, tap more into my emotional intelligence, where I think in the past I was very much in my IQ state, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to do this? Okay, well, no, I'm too smart for this. And I'm going to just, kind of walk away. Where now I have this emotional intelligence to me where I want to have a deeper understanding of things and really get clarity. And if I choose to walk away, it's from a place of clarity, not confusion.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting that. And the word that I was thinking of was the word that you use, compassion. To be more compassionate towards people. It's something that I'm working on right now, because I realize a lot of the things that aren't the way that I want them to be in my life, or a lack of compassion is what's causing that to happen. So me not being compassionate has created so many different problems, and just understanding that that is a core element of connecting with people, of having solid relationships, but also, right, if you're not able to be compassionate for others, you're not being compassionate for yourself. And learning that, to be compassionate to yourself, giving yourself grace, is so powerful, and is something that in a high stress, high achievement environment, there's not a lot of room for compassion. It's get it done by what, like you were saying, get it done by whatever means necessary. Somebody would give you a task, you would get it done no matter what.
Right.
That's a struggle.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's that compassionate side, Rob. It's interesting because that's what really makes you connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like meeting someone right now, and if I was to say, oh, like life is great, I'm perfect, I reached this, like how are you really going to connect with that person? I think understanding challenges and getting to the core of things. Now, obviously from a level of self-respect and a level of understanding of yourself, not being completely like a victim, right? I think it really helps connect you, and having that accountability conversation helps connect you with people much closer than you would ever.
Yeah. The definition of humility that I love, that I always go back to, is humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. So being compassionate and being vulnerable doesn't mean that I'm a pushover, because that's the weak side of that. That is thinking of yourself less. It's having a high integrity for yourself. And so you also carry that over to other people. You have integrity for other people also. And that creates real human connections. And unfortunately, that sometimes can be really hard to find. But I want to ask you this, because it's been true for me. As you've started to change, and as you've been on this journey, has you transforming brought better people into your life just naturally? Do they naturally show up more in your life because of how you're shifting?
Yeah. Yes. So I've read, some of the old school books of what it means to the true secrets of achieving success, right? And a
What are
lot
those?
of,
Which books are those? Give me a couple.
well, like there's a few, right? There's a few that I've read, but like there's, some of the like old school ones, like the self-discovery books that will teach you about like how to really get, how to get rich, and how to get like successful, and what it really means to have your network, right? There's a few of them that I used to read, and I remember I would read for the understanding of like, give me the secret so I can work on it and move forward, right? So there's components of that I remember like growing up reading some of these books and thinking like, okay, like I have to be this person to attract this person. Again, there's a state of performance there, right? And then once you actually do the work, and once you actually go through the ugly stage of growth and uncomfortable stage of growth, you have this new energy about you, and you start to truly attract people who are on the same kind of energy level or vibration as you. And you really start to really notice how true that energy shift is with the mindset shift once you actually experience it and you stop faking it and performing it, but you start actually being it. So I noticed it now from a level of it being authentic versus before. I think I was like thinking I was doing it, but really I was just attracting other people who were performing. So there was this kind of like fake, like we're all kind of faking it because we're still all learning. Do you know what I mean? Like about life and how to do it. So I think right now the people that I meet, and ironically, even the women that will reach out to me for my coaching services, there is this understanding, there is this common pattern of things that I've been through just energetically, that the moment they start speaking and in the moment I'm understanding them, they're surprised that I can understand them on such a deep level. But I'm like, obviously past that stage where I get it. And I'm also understanding now that I'm attracting these women because really, our journeys, there's a similarity, and I'm there to help and guide them through their own self-discovery journey.
Yeah. I mean, I overuse the statement, but make your mess your message. Once you leave a mess, you get through it. the only thing to do with it is to use it to help other people. So not to use other people, but to use the mess that becomes the message, and you help other people with that. It only makes sense. Why would we go through difficult things in our life and grow if we don't use those things to help others come up out of where they're at? So yeah, you get around those people who need that help. And you also get around brand new people that you're like, man, 5-10 years ago, I never would have been talking to this person. I never would have been having this conversation. And showing up, I've had this happen to me so many times where I show up differently in situations, like either purposefully or I'm just different now. And so I have people in my life that I've had, difficult relationships with. But now that I show up differently and I think differently, act differently, and I actually want to like help people, and I'm mindful of that, our relationships have completely changed because I'm no longer, like you said earlier, being a victim of like how we used to be. Now
Right.
I'm different, so they can be different. And so there's like I didn't have to fix them. I didn't have to change anything except for who I was. And that's a lot easier said than done,
Right.
but it's so worth it.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It's easier, like it's easy to say it, but when you think about the work that you've done and the journey that you've been through, but once you get there, there is this just sense of relief and clarity.
Yeah.
But you have to put in the work, right? You can't fake it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the truth,
And you can fake it. And faking it too. It's interesting how you said that, because it's like you're not faking it on purpose. You're just learning. And as you're learning, you're being at whatever level you're supposed to be at that point.
Yeah.
And like you said, you meet people who are at that level, and then you can tell when you go to new levels because you meet people at those levels, and you're like, wow. And you have like I'm going through like a breakthrough right now that has been really awesome, because I feel like what you were just saying, it was a great way that you said it, because I totally get it. You can be trying to be that way for years, and then you finally become that way at some point in time. And
Mhm.
it's not like I was faking it the whole time. I was just learning how to be a certain way. And that's hard to explain, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I totally get it. Right. And you and I are kind of in the same field when it comes to this kind of stuff with coaching, but really it's going back to that phase of unlearning. Part of it, unlearning is, also exploring and trying things, but you're exploring in the best way that you can. So I do believe everyone out there is trying their best, right?
Mhm.
With the capabilities and the circumstances that they have. But to reach a real breakthrough, you have to keep going, you have to keep pushing, and you have to keep kind of going through that uncomfortable, ugly stage of growth
Yeah.
and go right through it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So great conversation. Loving what you're doing. I want to encourage people to check you out. If you want to explore your coaching programs, you can get free resources and also book a complimentary clarity session. You can go to ZerinaLifeCoach.com/contact. The details are in the show notes. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, feel free to reach out. So that's probably the best way to contact me directly. And I've got different types of self-discovery coaches there. So sorry, coaching programs there. So just, reach out and let me know what area you'd like to talk about.
Awesome. Well, Zerina, this has been a wonderful conversation. Really glad to learn about your breakthrough and how you're transforming your life and transforming the life of women. It's so important to do the self-discovery, to be aware, but then, like you said, also to do something about it, to unlearn and actually do something about it. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Yeah, I think just kind of going to that, my own personal journey, sorry, but kind of going to that self-trust journey, which is a part of self-discovery. I would encourage people to really, start questioning how much they really trust themselves and how they're making decisions. And if that's an area that maybe they need to work more on, I think is just always fascinating to learn more about yourself. And you might be a confident person, but are you really trusting your choices and your decision-making skills? I would encourage people to, just ask that question and let that be an area that they can work more on. And you can do that through just, self-discovery and learning more about yourself.
100%. Very cool. So go to ZerinaLifeCoach.com to connect with Zerina. This has been another true testimony of breakthrough. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.